Shalom Havarim, James Trim here, and today I want to talk to you about a new witness to the original Hebrew text of the Synoptic Gospels. But before we get going, I need to ask you to please support these videos. Donations are down, and we actually need to raise $500 by the end of the day today, just to keep our account from going into the negative this evening, and the rent is due in just 3 days. So if you can possibly help, now is the time to do it. We need your help today. All this work that we are doing is a joint effort. It's not just myself, but you joining and partnering with me to make this possible. And for those that don't know, my wife is chronically ill. She suffers chronic pain. She's disabled, and I am her at-home caretaker. So please help us out, and you'll help make the research possible, as well as do a work of tzedakah, of charity. Okay, so today I want to talk to you about a new manuscript that has recently come to light. When I say come to light, some of the manuscripts that we have, pause before I get going. I'm so excited about this, I'm going into it. Before I tell you how to donate, first of all, you can donate by sending donations by PayPal to donations@wnae.org, or clicking on the donate link in the video description. Also, I want to ask you to like our video, subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell so you'll get notified when new videos come out. Let us know what you think of our videos in the comments. Participate in the discussions in the comments. All those things help the YouTube algorithm decide what videos to recommend to new viewers, and we want to get recommended to new viewers. And also, please share these videos on social media and through email with your friends, and on relevant Facebook groups, and so on. Okay, so let's get to talking about the manuscript in question. Before I say that, I will say that when I say that manuscript comes to light, sometimes these manuscripts have been buried or sitting, cataloged in some library somewhere in the world, but nobody has actually pulled out the manuscript and done the groundwork of analyzing it or even translating it, and then there's manuscripts that have been sitting in ancient monasteries, literally waiting to be discovered, but even in modern libraries around the world, manuscripts have been collected, cataloged, and of course, if you didn't live in that part of the world, you didn't even necessarily have the opportunity to look at the manuscript. And of course, such manuscripts weren't just on the shelf. So this manuscript is in question. Well, I will back up. Over the last couple of years, I've been working with Dr. Al Garza. Some of you may know him. And he's done a tremendous work on tracking down Hebrew manuscripts of New Testament books. Manuscripts that have been put away in libraries. Now, one of the beautiful things about this age in which we live is the digitization of library materials. And so a lot of these manuscripts in libraries all over the world are getting digitized and put online. Or they're getting digitized and made, and their catalogs are more available. Back in the 1980s, when I got the a copy of the DuTillet Hebrew Manuscript of Matthew from the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, France, it was a process. It wasn't the internet world that we live in today. And so the manuscript was in the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, France. I read about it in a library here in the U.S., in a seminary library that had a lot of books, and I discovered that there was this Hebrew Manuscript of Matthew, and I got the manuscript number. And so I then needed to get this manuscript from Paris, France. Well, I wasn't in a position to go fly to Paris, France, go into the library and see if they would give me access to the manuscript and all of that. But at least by this time, a lot of these manuscript materials were put on something called microfilm. And so, and they had catalogs of microfilm, and you could order the microfilm from these major libraries around the world, including the Bibliothèque Nationale. And so one of the problems was I didn't speak French. But fortunately, my mentor at the time, Rabbi Armand Danny Moyal, who was an Orthodox rabbi from Israel who had come to believe that Yeshua was the Messiah from studying the Talmud, the Midrashim, the Zohar, etc. And he was my teacher and mentor at the time, this being in the 1980s. And by the way, his testimony is on this channel. If you want to search it out, Rabbi Armand Danny Moyal. So Danny was not only fluent in Hebrew as an Israeli, but he was born in Morocco. And he was one of these orphans that was removed from Morocco and placed in an orphanage and raised up in an orphanage in Israel. And so his birth language was French and Arabic. So he was fluent in French, Arabic, and as a rabbi in Aramaic, and of course in Hebrew, having lived in Israel most of his life. So, as I said, he was fluent in French. So using three-way calling, I called him and I called the library in Paris, France, and he got me through the switchboard to the curator of the Hebrew manuscripts, who was a man named Mr. Gavel. And Mr. Gavel was Oxford educated and had perfect English, and he helped me from there. And he helped me order the microfilm. So the problem I had then was that I had to pay for it in French francs. And in the 1980s, we didn't have this digital world that we live in today. Paying for something in French francs and international transactions was not something that the average person did. So I had to go to a special bank that would produce for me an international draft, which was basically a money order or a cashier's check in French francs. Okay, but these sorts of things were usually done by people that were buying, say, a tanker full of oil and having it shipped to the United States, or that were in business of importing large quantities of stuff, and they were doing a transaction in French francs. And so they would buy an international draft. I don't even know if they exist anymore. I suspect they probably do. But so this, I don't remember how many French francs it was, but it came out to like $5 in U.S. currency. The problem was that the international draft was $50. So I spent 10 times more money on the international draft than I did the actual money for the microfilm. But I did get the microfilm, and I still have the box here that I got shipped from Paris, France, with the microfilm. It took several months, the whole process, frankly. It wasn't a rapid online type process that we have today. And it was probably 6 months before I actually had microfilm in hand. I still have the microfilm here of the DuTillet Hebrew version of Matthew from the library in Paris, France. Okay, so the problem I had then was that the microfilm from Paris, France was metric. So I went to my local library to try and feed it in, and it wouldn't work. So I then had to find a specialty business in Dallas, Texas, that would produce that had a metric microfilm reader, and then could make pictures, and then of course, or copies. So I had them make printouts for me, which I still have here, a complete facsimile printout of the manuscript, which again, the whole thing was such a process. Today you can get all this stuff. Some of it they actually have posted online, or you can just download the PDF, or you can order maybe a thumb drive or something from them. But Garza has done a tremendous work in gathering in a lot of this material. And I've been working with him on analyzing the material. And of course, it's been like drinking from a fire hose. It's really kind of ironic that for most of my time researching these matters, it was very hard to come across materials. And I spent a lot of time and effort. And I have in my library copies of old volumes, like the Münster Hebrew version of Matthew. I have photocopies of from a 1537 edition. It was not easy to track down these rare materials, and now they're all getting posted online, and it's like trying to drink from a fire hose. In fact, Dr. Garza has provided me with over 4,000 pages of Hebrew manuscripts. Unfortunately, most of them, when I analyze them, turn out to be a Hebrew translation of the Latin Vulgate, or a Hebrew translation of a late Byzantine type Greek text, or even some Hebrew translations of the Aramaic Peshitta text. And then recently, Dr. Garza provided me with a manuscript that was different from all of the others. This was a manuscript from the Zentralbibliothek Zurich, the Zurich Central Library, manuscript OR 150. And as I began to examine this Hebrew manuscript of Matthew, Mark, and Luke through chapter 17 of Luke, most of Luke. So I began looking at the Hebrew text of Matthew, and I discovered that we were dealing with a Hebrew manuscript of Matthew of the same version that we see in the DuTillet Hebrew version of Matthew. Now, the DuTillet Hebrew version of Matthew, I've done a lot of work on this. And we'll do another video on the DuTillet Hebrew version of Matthew soon. I've done a number of videos on the DuTillet Hebrew version of Matthew. I'll see if there's some that are could be linked in. Maybe, I don't know, we'll put some of that material together in the future. But the DuTillet Hebrew version of Matthew definitely descends from the original Hebrew text of Matthew. There are other witnesses to this version of Matthew. There's the Münster Hebrew version of Matthew, Hebrew text of Matthew, which is also a example of this same manuscript family, of the same Hebrew version with some variants to it. Likewise, there's another Hebrew text of Matthew that was compiled by one of Münster's students that had marginal notes from other Hebrew versions he had in his hand that had variant readings from it. Okay, and Münster stated that his manuscript of Matthew he obtained from among the Jews. The DuTillet Hebrew Manuscript of Matthew was apparently confiscated from Jews. So they definitely had a Jewish origin. One of the really interesting things about the DuTillet Hebrew Manuscript of Matthew, not only are there a number of internal evidences of that it is an example, a descendant of the original Hebrew behind the Greek. Not only there are several internal evidences for that, it also has an amazing parallel to the Old Syriac Hebrew version, Old Syriac Aramaic version of Matthew in the Old Syriac Gospels, which is very interesting because the Old Syriac Aramaic version was lost from ancient times until it was rediscovered in the 1800s, okay, the late 1800s. So Jews living in Europe in the 1500s had no access to this Aramaic version of Matthew, with which the DuTillet version has several unique agreements. Again, I don't know if we did a video on that in the past. If we didn't, we may do one in the future. Okay? But as I examined this manuscript, which we are calling the Garza Trim manuscript, to give it a title like DuTillet and Münster and whatnot, rather than just its catalog number, the Garza Trim manuscript is a manuscript of the DuTillet version, or another example of the same Hebrew type manuscript as the DuTillet manuscript of Matthew, which we have good evidence is an example of the underlying text behind our Greek Matthew. But this manuscript isn't just a manuscript of Matthew, it's a manuscript of Matthew, Mark, and Luke through chapter 17. Now, unfortunately, the scribe stopped at the end of Luke 17. We don't know why. Maybe he died. Maybe he lost interest. Maybe things got complicated in his life. He never finished copying the manuscript from the manuscript that was his source. He never finished copying it. We do know from his preface that it was a manuscript of the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But unfortunately, we only have Matthew through Luke 17. What's really amazing is that there's a colophon on the final page of the text. And the colophon on the final page of the manuscript reads, "The Torah of Messiah." I'll pause. That's very interesting, because when Sebastian Münster published the Hebrew text of Matthew in 1537 that he obtained from among the Jews, the title was "The Torah of the Messiah." So our book of Matthew appears to have been titled in Hebrew by the ancient Nazarenes, "The Torah of Messiah." Now, I say Matthew because in his transcription, the scribe has titles for the books, and Matthew is titled Torah of the Messiah, but the other books are titled Mark and Luke. Okay. So returning to the colophon says, "The Torah of the Messiah and the Brit Chadashah," the first portion, "the sacred and perfect. This is the Torah of Yeshua our Adon and our Messiah, written by the hand of Matthew, the evangelist, in the Greek tongue, and at a later time translated into the sacred tongue." Now, unfortunately, that's in the colophon, and that is apparently the opinion of the scribe at the time of this manuscript. The scribe apparently had been was operating on the assumption that Matthew was originally written in Greek and translated into Hebrew. There's very good evidence that that is simply not true, and that Matthew was written in Hebrew. In fact, I'm going to do a video on that soon, that Matthew was written in Hebrew originally. Even the so-called church fathers say this repeatedly. Okay, Matthew was originally written in Hebrew and translated into Greek. And what's really, though, interesting is the rest of this colophon. It says, finding light of the underground hiding place of the Jews, they that were hidden in their testimonies. So the colophon says that the person who is copying this manuscript, apparently it's finding light, it's coming to light, as we would say, and that it was hidden in underground hiding place of the Jews. The word that is used there could indicate caves. And then the Jews that it speaks of, it says, they that were hidden in their testimonies. So these were Jews that were living in the Jewish community, as apparently as Orthodox Jews, but who secretly believed Yeshua was the Messiah and had passed this had this document among them, and that it was hidden away in caves, I guess, in underground hiding places. Okay, here in Arana. So in the year Messiah came in peace to command by the hand of a faithful man and a righteous proselyte in Yeshua the Messiah, Rotherwolf Bernhardt, a medical doctor from Prague. So apparently one of these, the person who made this available, perhaps the scribe, I don't know, or the person that provided it to the scribe, was a righteous proselyte in Yeshua, a Jewish believer in the Messiah, apparently, who had come out as a Jewish believer in Messiah rather than a secret one. And his name was Rotherwolf Bernhardt, a medical doctor from Prague, a healer of ailments of their mouths swallowed, sounds like maybe a throat doctor, in the place of Bern, the country of Switzerland. Okay, so that's what we know about the manuscript. So apparently it was leaked from Jewish believers in the Messiah, and that it had a history of apparently having been hidden away in caves underground. There are a number of very interesting readings in this Hebrew version. I have been working on my analysis, and I'm still just analyzing the book of Matthew in this version, because this kind of analysis is time consuming. Fortunately, I have 40 years of research on Hebrew and Aramaic manuscripts and sources, and the Aramaic and Hebrew background behind our Greek versions. In other words, when you look at our Greek versions of New Testament books, there's a lot of evidence you can see of a Hebrew and or Aramaic version behind the Greek. So there's a lot of, and I have actually I have some of it right here. I have about 40 years here of research on the topic. These are just my notes, okay, over 40 years. So, put that over there. There is a lot of work yet to do, but there is this is just some of the work that I'm doing on restoring the Hebrew and Aramaic books of versions of New Testament books, particularly those that upon scrutinizing them and analyzing them appear to be a text that underlines our Greek. Now, for many books, I've come to the conclusion that they were originally written in Hebrew, translated into Aramaic, and then from Aramaic into Greek. So I'm going to be making more videos about this work in the future, about the Garza Trim manuscript. Perhaps I'll do a video in the future on some of the things that I'm finding internally in this manuscript, and also when I get to Mark and Luke, because right now I'm still just looking at Matthew. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the video for now, and we'll talk more. I'll be doing more videos on some of this work in the future, so look out for it. And again, we need your support for this work. This is very important work for the last days restoration. This is very important work for reaching the Jewish people with the Messiah, and with helping us better understand the teachings of Yeshua and his emissaries by being able to look at them in their original languages, because there are a lot of statements in the writings of Yeshua and the emissaries, the books of the New Testament, as it's called, that don't make sense in Greek and only really begin to make sense when we look at them in Hebrew and in Aramaic. And I'll be making some videos about some of these things in the future. So please donate to continue to make this work possible. You can do that by clicking on the donate link in the video description, or by sending donations by PayPal to donations@wnae.org. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Click the notification bell so you'll get notified when new videos come out. Let us know what you think in the comments, and share these videos on social media with your friends. Until next time, everybody, shalom.